Hey guys, what's going on? This is John, Gamester81, and this video is brought to you by Bitbox NES Game Cases, the best way to store and display your NES games. Be sure to check out stoneagegamer.com/Bitbox for more information. What's going on, gamers? My name is John with Gamester81.com, and today I'm going to review the Sega Nomad, which is a great handheld, a very overlooked handheld a lot of people kind of ignore. And the reason for that was because it's considered a financial failure for Sega. And it came out of a weird time. It came out in October 1995. Keep in mind that in 1995, Sega was supporting a ton of consoles, particularly in North America. Okay, so you had the Sega Genesis, which had been around since 1988. It was pretty much on its last legs. They were feeling the pressure from Nintendo. Donkey Kong Country just came out in 1994. The Super Nintendo was really showing how the capabilities and how powerful it was compared to the Genesis. And Sega was feeling the pressure, both just in sales and with marketing, all that. So they decided to release the Nomad, which is basically a portable Sega Genesis. But in addition to the Genesis, Sega was also supporting the Game Gear, which was the other handheld they were supporting. They also were supporting the Sega CD. The Sega 32X came out in 1984. And the Saturn came out in 1995, so they were supporting a lot of consoles. Oh, and another console that they were supporting, a lot of people kind of overlook, is the Sega Pico, which is a kid system. So they had a lot of their hands in different projects, and unfortunately they really didn't show the Nomad the tender loving care it really needed to succeed. Although through 1999, when the system was stopped selling, they actually sold over 1 million of these in North America. This never saw the light of day in Europe, never saw the light of day in Asia, even Japan. Never came out. A little backstory of how this came to be, though, is that in 1994, Sega actually released what they call the Sega Mega Jet. What this is, in case you guys don't know, it is a portable handheld Sega Mega Drive. It plugs into your TV. It's like a plug and play. This was initially released on all JAL airlines, and what it was for passengers to kind of rent during the flight. They could bring their own Mega Drive games, and they could play their games on the flight. Later on, it was released in department stores for a limited amount of time. This is considered a pretty rare console, but it's also considered a predecessor to the Sega Nomad. There is no built-in screen, as you can see, but it does have the 6-button controller. It has a directional pad, reset, start, and there is no batteries, no place to really plug in batteries. You have to actually use an AC adapter for it. So portable to a point, right? But then the Nomad came out a year later. This does have a nice 3.25-inch screen. The resolution for the time was actually pretty good. It's 320 by 224 pixels, which is actually really good. So the screen is a nice backlit screen. It does have the ability to have batteries. It takes 6 AA batteries. The pack I'm actually missing. I got this Nomad, by the way, at launch when it came out. I bought this retailed for, at the time, $180 US dollars, which in today's dollars with inflation is around $276. So back in 1995, but did come with a pack that you can put the batteries in. I misplaced a pack. It's kind of weird that the batteries had a separate compartment for it, which is weird, and those are commonly lost. Unfortunately, with me moving through the years, I've misplaced it. You can get them fairly cheap. It's not a big deal. But the reason why the batteries influence the game, it did make it portable, obviously, but with 6 AA batteries, which obviously is not cheap, the battery life on this thing is only 2 hours, which is atrocious. It's worse than the Game Gear. So you can imagine spending a lot of money on batteries. This is really before the time of lithium batteries where you could just recharge it. These are just normal standard batteries. It did have a rechargeable pack that you can use, and that helped a little bit, but it does run off an AC adapter, 120 volt AC adapter. It's the same AC adapter that actually works on the Model 2 Genesis, which is convenient. So, it's kind of nice to have that. One cool thing is it has an AV out, so I can plug this into the TV just like the Mega Jet and play games. It is compatible with some peripherals that they had. So some of them that would include would be like the Menacer, their gun that they had. If you plugged it into a TV, you can use their Menacer. You could use the Sega Mega Mouse, which is their mouse they had. You could use the Sega Channel, would work on this. The Aviator would actually work on this as well. But a lot of peripherals that didn't work on the Nomad were the big ones, like the Sega 32X would not work on this. The power base converter, which would enable the player to play Sega Master System games, would not work on this. The Sega CD is not compatible for the Nomad. So to the consumer at the time in 1995, people were wary of buying this because, yeah, there was over 500 games that were available at launch for this, which is cool. But why would you spend $180 if you could just play them at home on the Genesis anyway? And you can't even play other titles for the Sega CD and the 32X, etc. So that was a big hindrance for this. So as I mentioned before, it retailed for $180. Within a year later, they dropped the price down to less than $100 each. So you can get this on clearance. And overall, they sold 1 million units. This isn't the first handheld to be actually a portable console. In fact, TurboGrafx or NEC released nearly 5 years earlier the Turbo Express, which would play TurboGrafx 16 games. This is a great handheld, and I really recommend it. The only issue with this is the audio chip. Sometimes the audio can be bad in units today because they just kind of got old and it's hard to hear. But anyway, great handheld nonetheless. Definitely check it out, Turbo Express. It's actually huge. This is a lot bigger and heavier than the Nomad. The Nomad, for the most part, is pretty lightweight. It is kind of bulky. It is a little heavier than the Game Gear, for example. The screen is 3¼ inches, as I mentioned before, and the Game Gear screen is 3.2 inches. So a little bit bigger, not by much, but the resolution is a lot better on the Nomad. So when they were developing the Nomad, Sega codenamed the Nomad the Sega Venus. They had a kind of a way of naming their projects after planets. Obviously, they had the Sega Saturn. They were going to release a Sega Neptune, which is basically a Sega Genesis and 32X all-in-one console. There's a couple prototypes out there, but that never came to be. In fact, when they're developing the Sega 32X, initially it was codenamed Sega Jupiter. Later on in the development, they changed it to Sega Mars, and that became the Sega 32X. They were going to release a Sega Uranus, and actually what that was the console that actually had a bunch of crap come out of it. Now I'm just there's no Sega Uranus, but that'd be pretty funny. Well, it's probably a good thing then to keep the name Sega Venus. Otherwise, you'd have a whole bunch of kids playing with their Venuses all the time. Also, one more thing I want to mention about the Nomad was initially Sega was planning on developing a touchscreen portable handheld system. This is years before Nintendo DS, but at the time, touchscreen technology was very expensive. You had Tiger with the Gamecom, came out a little bit later with touchscreen, but it wasn't like it is today, and it was very expensive, so Sega kind of pulled the plug on that project, and the Nomad came to kind of replace that. Now let's take a closer look at the system itself. Let's take a closer look at some games and how compatible it is with the system. And also plug it into a TV and kind of show you some compatibility on the TV and how it works hooking up to the TV. So here's a closer look at the Nomad itself. It's a pretty bulky system, pretty thick, as you can see. Let's compare it to the Game Gear. You can see it's a little bit narrower than Game Gear and a lot thicker than the Game Gear, and the screen is slightly bigger on the Nomad than the Game Gear. You get the mode start. This is select start buttons here. You got X, Y, Z, A, B, C buttons here, the 6-button controller. You get the D-pad, directional pad. This is your on-off switch right here, top left corner. This is where the AC adapter will plug into. This is your AV out right here, top right corner. On the bottom here, you have your bright. You can adjust your brightness. This is where your second controller can plug into. As I mentioned before, you can play 2 players on games. This is your headphone jack. This is your volume. It's a pretty loud system. This is where the 6 battery pack would plug into here, or snap into there rather. There's no built-in compartment for batteries. They must have used all the space for all the CPUs and stuff like that. So overall, pretty well-built system. This is where the game cartridges actually plug into, like so. And like I mentioned before, it is not compatible with the Mega Drive games, unfortunately. Okay, I'm going to show you some of my favorite games on the Genesis and how they play. We're going to start with Sonic 2. AC adapter's in. This is the contrast. You can make it super dark, super light. Let's meet somewhere in the middle there. The volume, let's turn it all the way up. It's the loudest you can get. So you can see the resolution actually is pretty good. Definitely classic. Another great game is Zombie Ate My Neighbors. So let's check that out. Perfect timing considering as of filming this video, Halloween is in a couple days. One thing I have noticed about the screen here, if you look at a certain angle, it can kind of screw with the image a little bit. See, depending on the angle you look at it, see right there, it's kind of a weird angle. So that's just one thing to keep in mind, that depending on the angle, You can kind of mess with the picture of the screen. Great LucasArts title. Rest in peace, LucasArts, right? This game's been ported to a number of different platforms, including Super Nintendo and all the other platforms of the time, but it's a fun game. Highly recommend checking out. It's supposed to collect characters and kill zombies, basically. Another great game is Maximum Carnage. Initially, this one was actually a Blockbuster rental at one point. Great beat 'em up by Allgen. Yeah, this is actually one of the few Allgen titles that's actually worth getting, to be honest with you. Green jelly music covered. It's funny. Let's mess with the contrast a little bit. There you go. A couple more games I'm going to show you. I have here Street Fighter 2 Special Championship Edition in the Nomad. Got the TV hooked up. See how it plays. It appears on both the screen of the Nomad and the TV. And there really is no delay or anything like that. And it's nice, as I mentioned before, you can play two-player, which is great. So, this game I think used the most memory of any game on the Sega Genesis, actually. And the last game I'm going to show you is Virtual Racing. Not Virtual Racing, but Virtua Racing. It's a pretty decent port to the Genesis. Love this game in the arcade. Game definitely has not aged very well, though, I'll tell you that much. You can see it playing on the Nomad. Well, guys, that concludes my review over the Sega Nomad. I really appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you guys think about the Nomad. If you guys own a Nomad, let me know how you guys enjoy it or not. What are some of your favorite Genesis games? What are some recommendations you guys have for the Genesis or even Mega Drive games? I appreciate you guys watching, guys. Thanks for leaving a comment. If you guys want to keep in touch, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, also my website, Gamester81.com. I appreciate you guys thumbing up this video. It really helps let people know this video is out there. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you guys soon. Happy gaming. Hey, guys. Also, I just want to remind you that Gamester81, the video game for the ColecoVision, is currently available for pre-order at Indiegogo.com. I'll put a link below. Also, after the campaign will be over, it will be available at Atari2600.com. Thanks for your support, guys. We'll see you soon. Take care.